We were graduating the following year, and we were left with only one summer vacation. It was just a few days till the holidays were announced, so we decided to do something different and exciting. Although at first we were really confused because there was not a single place in town that we had not visited. It rather became a mystery for us. Just a day before the holiday, I invited Rachel and Alexa, my best friends, to a girls' hangover at my place. My parents were gone somewhere, so it was a kind of relief for me because we could play music as loud as we wanted. We could get drunk all night, or even call our boyfriends over for a night's stay, but we did not do anything like that. Even though it all seems really risky, but it was comparatively safe with the thing we did that night, or decided to do the following summer vacations. We were really enjoying ourselves, but then out of nowhere, we started talking about the most intriguing topic, the existence of ghosts. They all had something terrifying to share that had happened to either their parents or their grandparents. Suddenly, Alexa excitedly said, "We're going to a haunted place this summer. I have decided." And with that, she grabbed a laptop and started searching for all such places. "Are you serious?" I inquired. With glitter in her eyes, Rachel said, "Of course. I want to experience it all myself. I want to have something solid to tell my grandchildren then." And with that, we all burst into laughter. After searching for almost an hour, a strange site popped up on Airbnb. It was a cute wooden house near a lake, and there were many strange stories that people shared about the place. The gist of it all was that the place was most certainly haunted, and best for our exploration. Keeping the cheap rate in mind, we booked the house for our holiday for almost 2 weeks. We traveled for almost a day, and reached the place in the dark of night. Although we missed the beauty of the place, we were really excited about the thing we came here for. The best part was that the house was at a greater distance from the main town, and the residents were to submit all the electronic devices like mobile phones to the administration before going to the lake. It was rather a policy of pure enjoyment. As we stepped into the cute wooden hut, we were filled with pleasure. We slept for a few hours and woke up the next morning. We camped, swam in the lake, and played different games. As soon as the twilight came, we went to a hut and cooked ourselves some food. Everything was going great, but then we remembered what we literally came here for. So after having dinner, we turned off all the lights and lit some candles. We sat around it, but did not know how to awake the spirits. Then in a fun way, Alexa chanted, "I awaken the spirit of Bloody Mary," and we all started laughing. Suddenly, a strong wind gushed through the open windows and put off the candles. It literally gave us some real terror, but we were not afraid yet. Then we heard loud, evil laughter. We quickly grabbed each other's arms, and together we moved toward the window. There was nothing for a long time as we stared, but suddenly a white shadow emerged out of the willow tree, and with evil laughter went into the sea. We stood transfixed looking at the spirits, thinking it harmless, but then it emerged out of the sea with a more gigantic body and ran to our hut. Alexa and Rachel quickly ran to close the windows, whereas I went to shut the door, but no physical boundaries could stop the spirit from barging into the hut. Soon the spirit, like a soft wave, entered through the window and grabbed Alexa. I could not properly see them, but their screams were deafeningly loud. At that moment, I could not think of anything, but just acted upon my survival instinct and ran for my life. I ran and reached the town. Although there was no one there, I could see a church. I went straight to it, and luckily the priest was there. After knowing the whole situation, we got into the priest's car and came to the hut. Everything was silenced. I feared that Alexa and Rachel were already dead. The priest asked me to stay there, and within minutes, he came back with the captured spirit in a bottle. Alexa and Rachel were just unconscious at first, but later recovered their senses and were all right. It was something we had never experienced before, and luckily we survived it. I'm pretty sure that now we all have something solid to tell our grandchildren in the future. Two days were left for the summer holiday to begin, and I could not wait for it. I admit that I was an introverted kid, always sitting in the corner, eating alone, and the library was my favorite place in the whole school. Well, I had few friends in school with whom I did not spend much time, but it was like a bargain. I would do their homework and they would let me have their lunch boxes. Well, you can guess already, I am a fat boy. Although I enjoy their food a lot, not to mention their boring company, I would not list them among my favorites. My favorites were my cousins, and perhaps that was the best part of summer vacations. All of my buddies would come, and suddenly I was no more an introvert. I would sing and dance and explore and quarrel. All those stuff that I had never been in my school life. With my cousins, everything was different. The 2 days before the summer vacations became the longest days of my life, and when finally the holidays started, I could not hold back my excitement. My cousins, Albert, Augustus, Mick, Jack, and Tom, reached our grandparents' house just an hour after us. Well, I forgot to tell you that we spend our holidays with our grandparents, and we loved it above all. Soon the grandparents' dwelling, or the Richardsons' house, was filled with immense noises. They kissed us, hugged us, and cooked us a lot of delicacies. I was a die-hard fan of my Granny's soup, and would demand it at almost every meal of the day, but Granny never refused. The adventures started right the next day, and we started exploring the place we had explored 1,000 times before, but the fun never reduced. Rather, it enhanced with every visit. We set off in the early morning and went through the beautiful green mountainous ranges and crossed the glittering lakes. Grandpa explained the flowing water and its origin by pointing toward the glacier above and said, "The frozen water gets melted by the scorching sun of the summer. As a result, we get crystal clear water." As Grandpa was explaining, I and Albert noticed the stupa on the top of the mountain. Or rather, it was an old temple. Albert's eyes glittered, and he whispered into my eyes, "We must explore that place." "Aye, aye, Captain," I whispered back, and forwarded the mission to the other cousins. They all at once agreed without Grandpa noticing, but he said, "That temple you see, my children, there is a forbidden place. You must not go near it." The warning made it even more tempting, and we decided to visit the temple the same night. At night, as soon as our grandparents slept, we stealthily walked out of the house, and at once ran to the same place with the help of our torches. The moon was just a day away from fullness, so the sky was lit brightly. We hiked to the temple, thinking it was abandoned, but as soon as we got near it, we heard some strange chanting of verses, probably in a language we did not understand. Albert signaled us to keep quiet and move slowly. After reaching the temple, the chanting continued. We all peeked into the temple through its broken windows. We saw some men gathered in a circle around a fire, with bodies painted red and chanting something indecipherable. Then we saw one of the men bring a senseless child in his hands and placed him near the fire. Somebody poured a glass of water over the boy, and then one man brought the blood of the deer hung beside. The chanting became louder and louder as the group leader made the child drink the blood of the deer. It was rather odd, and with the procession of the strange activity, Albert started vomiting. The disturbance alerted the men, and they quickly captured us. We were imprisoned in the temple. At first we could not make sense of anything, but then the other child who drank the blood of deer told us that those men were the worshippers of the evil forces, and on each full moon they were to sacrifice as many kids as they could to their lord, the Satan. It gave us great fright, as the next day was a full moon, and we were all going to be sacrificed. We tried to escape, but our strength was nothing against the iron bars. I could not even imagine that our summer would not only be turned into a nightmare, but would become our last summer. The following day we prayed to be saved, and luckily at the full moon, our grandpa arrived with the policeman. We were all saved, and the Templars were captured. It was my last summer vacation, and my father, who was the business partner of Mr. Tate, got invited to visit his much-praised farmhouse. Though my father, Mr. Michael, had been Mr. Tate's business partner for almost 3 years, he never went to see the farm himself due to his busy schedule. This time, on Rebecca's constant request, Father decided to give us a visit, and as a little child, no one could really refuse her. It was rather odd that Mr. Tate never married and had no children of his own. He rather lived alone in a small hut near the farmhouse, despite the wealth he had. Rachel, my mother, would usually ask my father about the marriage of Mr. Tate, but my father had only one answer, which was, Mr. Tate had truly loved a girl named Alexa, but she died long ago, and he swore never to marry again. Rebecca and Father were greatly excited about the farmhouse, but I and Mother wanted to know about Mr. Tate. On the second week of our vacations, we packed all the relevant stuff and set off to the farmhouse. The beautiful valley in between kept us wondering about rural life. It took us almost 5 hours to reach there. Father was really glad to see his friend Mr. Tate, already there waiting for us. Mr. Tate had prepared several delicacies for us. After eating and getting refreshed, we were shown to our rooms. Luckily, we were all given separate rooms. I was so happy, as I got the room from which the whole farmhouse was visible. Rebecca, my little sister, insisted that we see the farmhouse right away, but the night had already drawn, so we could not possibly visit it right away. We had to wait for the next morning. They all retired to their rooms. In the moonlight, I stood against the window to have a look at the farmhouse. It almost made me startled to see a mother walking along with Rebecca in the farmhouse with a ting torch in hand. It was already really late, and walking at such an hour was nothing more than a pure danger. I could not call out to them as I thought that it might wake my father, so I pointed my torch at them. Beneath the giant willow tree, they turned around, and quickly I signaled them to come back. Mother said something to Rebecca and they came back immediately. Tomorrow, at breakfast, Mother told me to keep it a secret, as Rebecca wanted to go badly, and she had no other choice but to help her. That was settled, of course. I was not going to report her to anyone. As I devoured my bread, Mother jumped, saying, "There's a creepy man behind the giant tree looking straight at us." Mr. Tate turned around to have a look, but said reassuringly that there was no one except him and his cook Alec in the farmhouse. Father went out to look out for any signs of another human being, but there was no one. When we were taking a visit to the farmhouse, Mother started shouting again that the creepy man was following her and had hidden somewhere in the bushes, but there was nothing. We continued our walk, and the father told the mother that she was merely hallucinating. As we visited the farmhouse and returned, Mother started begging my father that we must leave the farmhouse right away, but my father refused and put her to sleep. Soon dinner was prepared and we all sat at the table, but Mother was not there. Rebecca asked their father, and he said that Mother needs some rest, so we must not disturb her. In the middle of the dinner, we heard loud screams, and after a second, Mother was running down the staircase, as if being chased by a wild lion. Behind him, a creepy man with a hammer in hand was running after her. Quickly, we jumped out of our seats and Mr. Tate ran for his revolver, while Father went to save the mother. Mother slipped on the stairs and rolled down the stairs. The creepy man was a second away from holding my mother, when Mr. Tate shot him on the shoulder and he fell in great agony. After a few weeks, we learned that the creepy man was a mental patient that had secretly escaped the asylum and was now under police custody. Luckily, Mother was not injured much, but the doctor recommended a week's bed rest.